Hello everyone and welcome to Call Sign Charlie Models. Time for another inbox review, and today we have a somewhat older kit but not too old of a kit, and we are doing the Hasegawa 132nd Junkers Ju-87G Stuka Kanonenvogel Luftwaffe anti-tank attacker. So this kit, once I pull up my scale mates right here, this kit was a new tool in 2005, so it's 20 years old. It's old but not old, if you know what I mean. So and with how much of a leap the toolings and moldings have made in the past 20 years, this might be a little bit old, but it's not too old of a kit. So the detail back in the early 2000s was still fairly decent, but compared to today's standard, it might be a little bit lacking. But we're going to see how it looks here in a second. But continuing on with the history on this kit, like I said, it was a new tool in 2005, and then in 2006 they released another one with new parts from Hasegawa. And then in 2007, 2008-ish, they released two more boxings, with the first one being in new parts in 2007, and then in 2008 they released a new one with new decals. So that's the whole history of this kit right here, and this is the boxing for the 2005 edition right here. So that was off of ScaleMates. Hopefully it's 100% accurate, but we'll see how everything looks inside. Now going off onto the side, we just have a little bit of not much on that side. I do need to cut the tape off of this box. This is literally the first time I have dove into or seen this kit. I have not seen any other reviews of this kit as well, so I am completely blind when coming into this. Now we go off to the other side, and we do have a nice picture of the built model right here. So we also have on this side, we have model length of 352 millimeters with a wingspan of 474 millimeters and a total parts count of 167 pieces. So it's going to be a fairly decent number of pieces, but not too many. So I'm going to get the box opened up. We look inside, and there's a fairly decent amount of plastic inside. I'm going to get everything set up and pulled out, and then we can start going through the instructions, the decals, and then all the plastic. So give me 1 second and I'll be right back. Alright, so starting off with the instructions, we have the typical Hasegawa booklet format, black and white right here, and then on the front we have a repeat of the picture of the built model right here that we had on the side of the box. Then we also have a nice little history on the bottom right here of the Junkers Ju-87 Stuka. I'm not sure if it goes into the actual Kanonenvogel, but yeah, we'll have to see. I'm not seeing anything about this particular one, maybe in the later paragraphs, but I'll see about that later on. Then we open up and we have our sprue call out right here. Again, these are nice and numbered largely, so you can actually read the numbers of the parts in the sprue call out, which is nice because sometimes the numbers are pretty hard to read on the sprues. So having this and having the numbers easily legible is a very nice touch and really helpful. Even though my eyesight is still really good, I don't know what it is about the plastic reading the numbers. Sometimes it's very difficult. So we go through all the sprues, and then we have our color call outs just using standard colors right here on that. So starting off with the kit. Alright, so we have our pilot, and then we have our flight deck with our seat, rudder pedals, control stick, and a couple bulkheads. There's not much detail to the inside of this right here. We do have, looks to be a decal maybe for this piece right here, and then we have our aft guns right here. So a little bit of detail, maybe sprucing it up with either a resin cockpit or some 3D printed decals out there definitely will be a nice touch, because this is a large glass cockpit and you will be able to see inside of it if you don't put the pilots in. Now if you put the pilots in, you're not going to be able to see much of it, but I digress. Alright, so moving on to step 3, we're getting our pilots, our cockpit, and we do have sidewalls for the cockpit going in, and then we're getting our fuselage halves closed up. We also do have a few parts to add on to the sidewalls right here, and also a couple holes to drill into the sides of the fuselage. Alright, after that's done, we're adding a top piece that includes our instrument combing and instrument panel right here. And then after that, we're adding our nose section. We just have exhaust. We don't have an engine on this kit, but we do have like the intake right there. And then after that, we're working on our propeller. 3 separate blades with the prop cone and the prop plate right there. After that's all done, we're getting a couple armor plates on, and then our front nose section added to the fuselage. Alright, and then up next we have our wings. We have on, looks like our lower wings, we have a few holes to drill out for this. Getting all that done, and then we're getting our wing halves assembled, and then adding in our maybe our flaps or our speed brakes right there. And then again on another piece, we have an option right here between option 1 and option 2 on which speed brakes slash flaps we use, and also a couple of lumps and bumps and armor plates to go on, and different wing tips as well for these wings. Okay, so after that is done, so the previous part was our outer wings, and now we're working on the inner wings right here. Getting all that done, we have a few of the super coolers going on here, and then we have getting our outer wings into our inner wing, and then we're going to attach all of that to our fuselage along with the upper spinal piece right in here. And then after that, we have some glass work to go on with a landing light. Then we're working on our horizontal stabilizers, getting all that done with some bracing and some actuators for our rudder. And then moving right along, we move on to our landing gear, getting that on, and then our tail wheel as well. And then we do have a couple pieces to add on to the wings, like antennas, some actuators for our flaps and ailerons as well. Then a couple of other lumps and bumps, pitot tube right there as well. Okay, after that is all done, we are working on our gun assembly, the cannon assembly. Getting all that on. Looks like it's going to be a fairly nicely detailed gun. It is 2 different pieces for the whole barrel and everything, so definitely going to have to take care of the seam line on that. And for that, I use my barrel scraper, which is right here. From Alexan Models, and I found these on eBay, and they do perfect job on scraping out the seam lines in barrels while also maintaining the curvature of the barrel as well. You don't get a flat spot on the barrel when you're scraping out the seam line. Alright, so and then the final step for this is our canopy section. Moving right along, we have our canopy installation. We do have a few parts to mask off. It looks like it says white pulling out figure, please apply in from the inner. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But anyways, does look like we have decals for the framing. I'm not sure what that is. We'll have to take a look at it later on. But again, just adding all these pieces, and then we do have the option of having the canopy closed or open right here. Then moving on to our scheme callouts. I don't want to call them color callouts because they're not in color. We do have the difference in colors right here. This is a nice camo job with the kind of spiral spinner on the front. Again, a nice scheme on that. That's option A, or 1. And then we have option 2, which is another nice splinter camo. And then an all black spinner on the propeller on that. And then again, this is Oberstleutnant Hans Ulrich Ruden Autumn of 1944. And then we have Panzerkampfung. Sorry if I butchered that. And that's all it says for that. Now it looks like we do have patterns for our mask for the splinter camo right here. So that is going to be really helpful when painting. And you can either get the large sheets of Tamiya tape like this, which is just one large sheet of Tamiya tape, and then kind of trace it out on there, or you could use this and then kind of tape it down on that and get your soft edges. I know for me, I'm going to be using this, cutting this out and then tracing out along here to get my camo scheme on that. Alright, so moving on to our decals. Decals do look very nice and register, kind of a matte coat to them, so no issues about that. All the crosses and everything are on here. We do have that special symbol that certain companies don't like to have on the platform. So that symbol is right here, okay? And then just moving along, we have a bunch of other nice decals. We have the spinner, the spiral for the spinner right here, and it does look like we do have decals for the framing on the canopy part, so that's a little bit different. I haven't seen that before. We also do have a nice instrument panel decal. It does look a little bit 2D, but for 2005 standards that does look really good. Now in today's standards it's subpar, but back in 2005 that is some really nice decals right there. But all the other decals, nice and a matte finish on them, and should have no issues going down. Should be a lot of fun to work with. Okay, so all the parts are in one bag. Alright, they're not separated except for the clear parts. The clear parts are in a separate bag. But up first we have a piece that fell off the sprue right here, and this is our prop cone. Again, nice panel line on the side. And I'm going to have to clean up where it kind of bent off of the sprue gate right here. It did leave a little notch in here, so definitely going to need to clean that up. But everything else on the prop cone does look nice. And then moving on to our wings. Alright, so these are our outer wings. We have some nice panel line and rivet detail on here. Looks nice and in scale. Maybe a little bit large, and we do have a decent amount of flash right on the very wingtip right here. That's going to be shouldn't be too difficult to clean up, but we do have a little bit of flash right on the edge of this wing right here. The rest of the pieces, we do have some scuffs from it just bouncing around in the plastic bag with all the other sprues. I think there's what, 6 different sprues in the one bag, so we do have a lot of little scratches in here. We do have the web effect on the plastic from where when they're doing the injection molding, all the plastic came in and just cooled off at different temperatures. It's not to worry about because you're not going to be able to see it when it's all painted. But as you can see, the actual panel line and rivet detail right here, looking on the camera, looks very, very nice. Alright, I can see it better on the camera than I can actually see it in person. So you can see here that flash I was talking about. Alright, so moving on to our next sprue, we have our inner wings on the top and the bottom right here. And again, some really nice raised detail on there, along with some recessed panel lines and rivets along there as well. So some really nice detail on that. And then on the bottom side, again, really nice rivets and panel lines, and we even have these little nubs for like a fuel tank or something like that. But again, really nice detail on that, and nice detail all the way through on all the pieces on this kit. We have our different wingtips right here on all these. They are in 2 separate pieces, so have to glue those together. And then all the other pieces, we flip it over to the other side. All these are going to be connected in halves, so I'm not really worried about it. We do have a piece that is a single piece right here. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but we do have a couple of ejector pin marks on the outside here. They are raised, so they should be fairly easy to take care of. Just a couple quick hits with the sander, and I'm hoping that the camera picks that up. And they are slightly raised, but like I said, a couple quick swipes with the sander and they should be okay. And you shouldn't have to worry about losing much of the detail surrounding it. Alright, so moving right along, we have our front nose section right here, and again, like the rest, absolutely amazing rivet detail and panel lines, top notch on that, especially for 2005. Really nice detail all the way around. Moving right, and then we have some bulkhead detail, we have some raised rivets on this, and then our struts for our tail assembly right here. And a few other pieces, just basic detail on those. Our guns, okay, so our guns, the detail on them are decent. Wouldn't say it's anything to write home about, but, and then the barrels, you'll need to drill out the tips of the barrels. Now for the instrument panel does look actually very, very nice. Some nice detail on the inside of those. As you can hopefully see right there, some really nice detail on that instrument panel, and you get that decal on it and get a good amount of solvus set on there. That should all form around and make that instrument panel look very nice. And then to add the extra go above and beyond, you put on some liquid UV resin, some clear UV resin, and on all the dials to give that glass look. That's really going to look nice when it's all done. Now flip over to the other side. A lot of these parts you're not going to be able to see on the reverse side. We do have a couple ejector pin marks on this piece, which I think is that's an antenna right there. So you do have a couple shallow ejector pin marks, so it shouldn't be too difficult to take care of. But again, very nice. And then again on these struts for the tail assembly too, we do have a couple ejector pin marks on that, but they are not in any detail areas and they are fairly shallow. So a quick hit with a little bit of putty and a couple quick hits with a sander, and those will be all taken care of. Alright, so moving on to our armament sprue, we have our wheels right here. Wheels look okay, but they are going to be covered up by the struts right here, the little pieces that go over that. So not really 100% worried about the wheels, because you really are only going to be able to see about maybe that much of it. So not worried about those wheels at all. We do have a couple bombs right here, but you're not going to really use those for this kit. Now our cannons right here, which we will be using for this kit, the detail on them looks pretty nice. We have some nice rivet detail along here, as you can see. And then the cannons, again, some nice detail. The barrels they have recessed detail on them, but I think if you want to risk it with a micro drill, that's definitely going to be an interesting time trying to drill all those little holes out that are really, really close to each other, to get that look. But if you do it, if you succeed, that is going to look absolutely amazing when all of this is put together. Just another armament sprue with the landing gear, or the wheels and bombs and cannons right there. Next we have a small sprue with a couple other detail parts. I'm not sure what these are for. Looks like maybe bomb racks, but nice detail on those as well. Alright, so now we have our fuselage detail, our cockpit walls, and our wing spars, and a few other detail bits. Our seats do look rather generic right here. There's not much detail to it, and there's also a few scratches on it, so might look into getting an aftermarket one of those at least. The sidewall detail on this cockpit actually looks very, very nice. Some nice switch detail right in here, as you see. and some boxes and such. If you add some cabling, some lead wire in there, that's going to send this above and beyond for detail wise, because this actually looks very nice for the sidewalls on the cockpit. For our tailplane, our horizontal stabilizers, again, very nice rivet and panel line detail. We have a nice demarcation line between the elevators right here. So again, very nice detail on that. Our wing spar for the wings is nice and chunky on that, so it's definitely going to support the weight of the wings. And then we have this radio box for the back. There's some detail on these boxes, but not much. Again, might look into getting some like Quinta Studios or Red Fox or one of those companies that do the 3D printed decals, just to really liven this cockpit up a little bit. And for the fuselage, alright, moving on to the fuselage. Again, we have some really nice panel lines and rivet detail on there, as you can see, just moving right along. All of that panel line and rivet detail absolutely looks amazing. And when you get this all painted up and get a wash on it, it's really going to look really nice. And the same thing with the other side. We do have a few scratches on the plastic from where it was getting jostled around in the box with all the other sprues, but again, that shouldn't be too difficult to take care of, because they don't feel like they're really deep gouges. They just feel like they're surface scratches right there. We flip it over to the other side. None of this detail you really need to worry about, because you're going to have these sidewalls that go into here. We do have a little bit of flash on one of the ejector pin marks, but that, like I said, easy knock off with my thumb right there. So that's all taken care of. Everything else on here does look very nice. Alright, so up next we have the landing gear struts. Again, we have some scratches on it, but again, just surface scratches. They're not like deep gouges, so those shouldn't be bad. And we have a couple of propellers right here. Some nice shape to those blades. They are nice and razor thin on the edges, so that's nice. And then our tail wheel also has some nice detail on it. We flip it over to the other side, really no issues. We do have actually a couple of small ejector pin marks right there and right there on both of our propellers. I'm not seeing it on the other side, but just have to pay attention to that. The inside of here you're not going to be able to see, and our exhausts are not hollowed out on the tip, so that's another thing I'll probably be looking at for aftermarket. If I fail at drilling these out, right, if I fail at that, I'll probably get the aftermarket exhaust, but I'm going to attempt to drill those out. But if your drill's off just a half a degree, you end up going through the sidewall and completely ruining it. Alright, moving on, our flight deck. Again, not much detail to it. You're going to have the seat over it and then a couple other pieces, and then if you put the pilots in, you're definitely not going to be able to see it. But talking about the pilots right here, we do have some decent detail on the pilots right here with the harnesses and our legs, and a little bit of fabric detail on there. The faces, let's see if they have resting MRE face. Alright, yeah, so at least the faces on this kit, they don't have resting MRE face. Meals ready to expel faces. They actually look like they're smiling on here. So again, some nice detail on the faces of these kits right here. You can see some of the ejector pin marks. I mean, they're on the other side, but you can see them through the top side of the plastic, as you see right there. For the figures, we do have an ejector pin mark on the inside of the knee and on the inside of the heel of the boot right here. But other than that, I am not seeing like any on the bodies or on the heads. Nope, none on the heads. So the only are on the legs right there, on the knee and on the heel of the boot, on both inner legs right there. Also on the inside of the arms, we do have an ejector pin mark on the glove of each arm. Alright, in our next bag is our clear parts, and we also have a couple poly caps for something. Not sure what it is yet, but we'll find out in the instructions. when we start building it. And then moving on to our clear parts. These clear parts are nice and crystal clear. They do have the framework on them, so you do have an area to mask. Now the framework is not like raised or recessed. It might be a little bit raised on the inside, so masking this might be a little bit of a nightmare unless you buy one of the laser cut masks from one of the companies. And we also do have a couple ejector pin marks right on the top side of this canopy. That is odd. I don't think I've ever seen ejector pin marks in a canopy. I've seen seam lines down a canopy, but never ejector pin marks. I'm not worried about this one right here. It does have a couple ejector pin marks, but that's going to be a painted portion of the model right there. But again, the clear parts are nice and clear, but you do have, like I said, those 3 ejector pin marks right on the plastic. So again, and then again on this one, again we have some ejector pin marks on that right there. Alright, so that does it for the 132nd Hasegawa Junkers Ju-87 Stuka Kanonenvogel Luftwaffe anti-tank attacker. And this kit actually looks pretty nice. The exterior detail on it looks very nice. The panel lines and rivets and everything, absolutely exquisite from 2005. No issues with any of that detail. The exhaust, again, a little bit of work to drill those out. Hopefully I won't fail on drilling them out and have to order aftermarket ones, but I mean, that's the option that we have for that. The cannons look great. They do have the recessed detail for the barrel tips right here. Drilling those out, again, I have my micro drills right here. I don't know if I have one small enough to go in, but we'll give it a shot. Alright, so yeah, when I start building this kit, which I don't know when that's going to be, it'll come up someday, but again, some nice work. I'm looking forward to building this one. The camo scheme, definitely going to do the spinner with the spiral on it instead of the plain black. Just, that looks more interesting to me on that. So that's all I have to say about this kit. Also, the clear parts. Clear parts looked crystal clear. My major downfall for that is the ejector pin marks that are in the clear parts right along the top side. That's the only major gripe I have about the kit. That's the only thing I have to gripe about on the kit. So I hope you guys enjoyed this inbox review. If you haven't yet, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Also, comment down below if you've built this kit and what you thought of it. Also, if you had any hiccup areas or fit issues, go ahead and front load us with that, so that way we know when we go to build it, we know to attack that area first. But yeah, so again, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Until next time, have a great day, stay frosty, and happy modeling.